Matthew, you've got a great book out about free speech. Genuinely mean that. It's a good book of free speech. But I can't let this opportunity go without reminding you what you once said about a public figure in this country. He takes crude stances. He seeks scapegoats for complex problems. He goads guests into simplistic answers and humiliates them when they think better of returning to the studio. A parasite on the contours of democracy, a temporary hero to the deluded souls for whom he becomes a cheerleader. He doesn't seem to care about what soapbox he's on, provided it's topical and divisive. Now, for the benefit of the viewers, which beloved public figure was that?
That was, if memory serves, I think that was you.
It was me. It was me. And you know what? We live in a democracy. I believe in free speech like you do. We have locked horns many times. But actually, I thought, given what's going on with Elon Musk and given the fact you've written a book about free speech, the best way for me to show that I mean it is to have one of my more voracious critics on and to say, you know what, we can disagree with each other. And hopefully at the end of it, we might like each other a little bit more than we started. We shouldn't be difficult.
And in fairness, I think I should point out that in response, a barbed response to that column on television the next morning, you played out a clip before becoming a journalist. I think you know, as a table tennis player, the British #1 for 10 years, and you played a clip of me losing badly to a German player, and you said, this guy's a choker. if he can't win at table tennis, how can we take his opinion seriously on anything else?
I think it's fair.
You gave as good as you did.
I played down to every worst fear you had about my behaviour. It'd be good to see. Right, let's talk about Elon Musk for a moment then, Matthew, because I think it's a really interesting thing that's happening here, because Musk is not a right-winger by any conventional stand. He's a Bernie Sanders fan, one of the left-wing politicians in America. He's always historically talked about being on the left, and yet it's the left that are going most nuts about him taking over Twitter. I think because they're used to really having their own way on Twitter, where it's the right that gets shadow banned, it's the right that get banned completely, Trump and so on, and it's never the ones on the left who often, in my view, behave just as disgracefully.
Well, for me, the great strength of liberal democratic societies is that we have opinions, we express them, hopefully courageously and occasionally in a slightly ad hominem fashion. But in order to dispute someone's view, you should refute it. You should come up with evidence as to why it's wrong. When we censor other opinions, we're denied the opportunity to engage with them. We can often push them underground. They can develop a greater cachet. I don't have a problem with listening to people who disagree with me. And it was, I think, Voltaire's most eminent biographer, I will defend to the death your right to say, even that with which I disagree. We lose that in liberal societies. If we have a liberal set of institutions cohabiting with an illiberal mindset, I think it weakens us and it strengthens
you know what,
the
Matthew?
true autocracy.
We have a lot more in common than you think, because I completely agree. Emily, this is the nub of it for me, is that the very people who call themselves liberals are behaving in not just an illiberal way, but actually with this cancel culture mentality, almost like the fascists that they profess to hate most.
Well, I think one of the more worrying things I've seen is people at sort of Oxford and Cambridge University, where you're not allowed to go and talk there. You're sort of deplatformed.
But only if you're on the right, only if you're a conservative.
But even some of these were like really mild. It was like, there certainly weren't my opinion of what was on the right. And I don't think many people's of what was on the right. And, you know, we've just seen this with the trans debate. There are lots of nuances to many arguments. Right. If you don't sit and debate a nuance and complex issues, how are you going to come up with solutions? Or you can't just
Kevin, look, let me start with you by saying this.
You're just becoming binary.
I've lived for 40 years.
Let me start.
Papers like the Sun, the Telegraph, the Mail and the Express trying to get people banned and lose their jobs for saying things they find unacceptable. Right. Yes, there's intolerance on the left. There's a huge number of whingers who are intolerant.
I was about to tee you up by saying I think there are a lot of people on what I call the radical end of both ends of the spectrum, right and left, who unfortunately dominate a lot of the noise and airspace. You know, there's an amazing stat that 20% of people in Britain and America are on Twitter. But of that 20%, 10% of those make 80% of the noise, and they tend to skew radical. So you're getting a sort of constant reverberation of extremity of opinion. And that is, I think, diluting democracy in the process.
Well, there's much to be angry about. But, of course, if you're on Twitter or more social media platforms, the more outrage you make, the more followers you will get. And we saw with Suella Braverman tonight, the Home Secretary, because she's accused of unlawful behaviour, because she's accused of ignoring the ministerial code, and she's sacked, gets a job back after 6 days. She talks about an invasion of the South Coast, and she knows that is incredibly inflammatory 24 hours after a petrol bomb attack on Dover.
I completely agree.
But she does that because half of Twitter in the country will say, yeah, you're quite right, we're being invaded, and the other half will say that's incredibly inflammatory and that is outrageous and violent.